class, Prof. JC here. Welcome back to the Office Hours podcast. I hope that last week, your break, you were able to have, at least from this one unit class, that it hopefully helped a little bit and you were able to get a little bit of rest. But we're back at it this week, and we'll continue to go all the way up through Thanksgiving. We'll take a break off Thanksgiving week, and then we'll finish strong those final 3 weeks. And we'll probably have some kind of a reflection due that final week. Hey, I want to keep going on what we heard from the interview a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Wayne Schmidt, who is the general superintendent of the Wesleyan Church, and I would consider him to be a strong mentor of mine. We don't have we're not necessarily talking on the phone every single day, but when we do talk, we just pick up right where we left off. And it's a crazy story how we met. I think it was through Facebook, and I had friended him or something like that for no other reason, and then I was doing some things, and he saw them. I think I asked him a question. He asked me a question about what I was doing. And then we just started, we connected thinking it would just be a quick 15-minute meeting to answer some questions about some stuff. And we found that we really connected. And so we try to meet up whenever he's in San Diego or I'm back in Indiana, back where his offices are. And he's just incredible. Anyway, he talked a lot about this idea of mentorship, and where for him it was really accountability. You know, he talked about how important it was. He had this accountability partner who is a very successful person, and I've looked him up before. He's very successful on his own. Obviously, Dr. Wayne Schmidt has been very successful in his field as well. They both reached the top, and they both would credit this idea of having this accountability partner. I want to talk about mentorship today. Some of you on this call, you're in a place where it's probably time to find an accountability partner. Some of you on this call, it's probably you're in a season where it's time to find a mentor. I think having a mentor is always important. And here's what I would say about our mentors. You and I are both the sum of our mentors. You and I are both the sum of our mentors. In one of my recent classes that I was teaching, in-person class, we were talking about this idea of privilege, which it's become kind of a bad word in recent years, and it doesn't need to be. But we were talking about this idea of privilege, and the class wasn't getting it. They're kind of resisting that word. They're kind of resisting so many things that have happened in recent years that have made that word kind of a bad word. So they didn't want to talk about their privilege. But then what I did, we did an exercise, and I said, hey, let's go around and talk about your mentors. Who was the one mentor that you had growing up? And tell me why, or tell me what this person does, or tell the class why, and what this person did, and what's the thing that you respected most about them. Almost to a T, almost to a person. By the time we got back around at the end of that conversation, every single person sitting at that table, when I hear them talk about their mentor and I hear them talk about themselves, there's almost no difference between who they are. And so the conversation led to the privilege was the mentorship that they had, and many of them are still on a journey to become like that mentor. That's such a privilege to have that. And so I think it's always good for us to have a mentor, whatever stage of life we're in, because then we have someone that we're looking towards long-term and saying that this is someone I want to be like. And, I've always been kind of an older soul. So even when I was younger, I had older mentors. But I would say that, the primary mentor, the first mentor I had, who's actually a dean up at Biola University now in Los Angeles. He's been a lifelong educator. I happen to be I think I was like 6, 7, 8, or 9. He must have been in his like mid to late 20s. And he was my first mentor. He was the first person I looked up to. And he was a professor, and he's still doing it. He's had a great career. And I think in some ways I've become, I've followed that journey to kind of get to where I am. You all probably have the same thing that you can think about in your own life. So I want to read here on page 43 from our book here, The Art of Work. It talks about this idea of mentors. Mentoring is an easy word to throw around these days. You'll hear it tossed into conversation among friends or casually mentioned between business colleagues over coffee, but mentoring is much easier to talk about than it is to practice. Why is it so difficult to find a mentor? To begin with, you're dealing with people, flawed human beings who each have their own expectations and agendas. And that's important as well, to understand that your mentor is not a perfect person. Okay. Today it's easier to find mentors because of YouTube, and you can go on there, and I have several YouTube mentors, and these are people who've been very successful. And I've been lucky enough to find videos where they're giving talks or they're giving interviews or whatever it might be. These are typically business leaders. and they're mentors of mine. But if I were to get to know every single one of them, I'd find out that every single one of them are flawed human beings. Every single one of them, if they're married or they have a partner or spouse, probably doesn't talk very nicely to their partner or spouse all the time. Every single one of them probably a little bit impatient. Every single one of them are probably a little bit rude sometimes. And this is just the way it goes. So as human beings, it's important that to understand that our mentors aren't perfect. Okay. We all have our own issues. And one of the reasons it can be so hard to find a good mentor these days is so few people have been mentored. Okay. We've believed the myth of the self-made man or self-made woman and have given into the illusion of self-reliance. Now, I don't like that sentence right there. I do believe in self-reliance, but I also believe self-reliance plus mentorship. Okay. Becoming self-made as a man or woman plus mentorship and understanding. That's where the privilege comes in, understanding whose shoulders are we standing on to get there. But I am a firm believer in the idea of self-reliance. Stop depending on other people to give you what you need to find within yourself. I think that is key. But we also have to understand faith, spirituality, standing on the shoulders of other people. All that's important as well. What we need is something to pull us out of our own independence and arrogance, which means the mentor that comes might not be the one that we're expecting. Chances are your apprenticeship will not look like you imagine. Your mentor may not be the teacher you dreamed of, and that's the point. This is your education of what is, not what you think should be. A teacher who challenges you, who doesn't meet your expectation, who forces you to think and act differently is exactly what you need. This, after all, is the job of an educator or a mentor, okay? The teacher appears when the student is ready is a nice sounding cliche, but the truth is that the student is never ready. Throughout our lives, we will encounter a number of people who will appear at times ready to instruct, and it will be our job to recognize them. Okay. Now, if we go on, he talks about this. He here on page 49, he talks about, he continues to talk about this. He says, every place you go, every person you meet, every job you have is a chance to gain greater clarity in your self-education. Life is a classroom, and if you're paying attention, you could recognize the daily lessons available. Then he comes back and he asks the question on page 45, how do you find these people? Where do they come from? It's hard to tell. Likely they'll surprise you, appearing seemingly out of nowhere at just the right time. The whole thing will look like an accident or a mystery, but of course it is far from it. As Paulo Coelho writes, when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. There's some truth to that, and I do believe that. That's from the book called The Alchemist, and I highly recommend you get that book. I have 3 copies. It is that dramatic. I try to read it once a year. I started reading about 3 or 4 years. I don't think I read it last year, the year before. So I've gotten off of it, but I think I first read it 5 years ago. Phenomenal book. There's some truth to that. Fortune favors the motivated. When a person is determined to not just succeed, but to do work that matters, the world makes room for such ambition. You won't be able to predict how this apprenticeship unfolds, but you can be prepared for when it comes your way. Here's the question I want you to consider this week, okay? This idea of purpose, finding a mentor, how important that is, okay? I want you to think about 3 people in your own life, okay? Who are potential mentors to you, or who are mentors to you. And I want you to write about these people, okay? And I want you to tell me who they are, and you can even just put first name, kind of what they do, why they're your mentor, and what's the most important thing that you can take away from their mentorship in your life. Who these people are, why they're your mentor, and what's the most important thing that you can take away from that person's mentorship in your life, okay? Again, it's just incredibly important for us to understand that yes, again, I believe in self-reliance. I believe in becoming a self-made person, but we have to understand that in all of that, there are shoulders that we're standing on, people who have done the work to help us to get to where we are. And I want to know who yours are, why they're important to you, and what you have learned from them or what you intend to learn from them moving forward. Hey, thanks so much for watching this, and I look forward to reading your responses. Reach out this week if you need anything from me, and I'll see you in Canvas, and if not there, I'll see you in the next podcast. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. I'll see you soon.